November 11th, 1899, Volume 3. Obedience prevents her from conforming to justice. As I was in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself, and it seemed I was going around the earth. Oh, how inundated it was with all sorts of iniquities! It is horrifying to think about it. Now, while going around, I arrived some place, and I found a priest of holy life, and in another place a virgin of blameless and holy life. We gathered, the three of us together, and we began to converse about the many chastisements that the Lord is sending, and about the many others that he keeps prepared. I said to them, "And you, what do you do? Have you perhaps conformed to divine justice?" And they, seeing the strict necessity of these times, and that man would not surrender even if an apostle came out, or if the Lord sent another St. Vincent Ferrer who might induce him to conversion with miracles and prodigious signs. On the contrary, seeing that man has reached such obstinacy and a sort of insanity that the very power of miracles would render him more incredulous, invested by this most strict necessity, for the good of men, in order to arrest this rotten sea that inundates the face of the earth, and for the glory of our God, so offended, we have conformed to justice. But we are praying and offering ourselves as victims, so that these chastisements may turn out for the conversion of the peoples. And you, what do you do? Have you not conformed with us? And I, no, I cannot, because obedience does not want it, even though Jesus wants me to conform. But since obedience does not want it, it must prevail over everything, and I am forced to be always in contrast with blessed Jesus, which afflicts me very much. And they, when it is obedience, surely one must not adhere. After this, finding myself inside myself, I saw dearest Jesus for just a little, and I wanted to know where that priest and that virgin were from, and he told me that they were from Peru. November 11th, 1900, Volume 4. By going out of the divine will, one loses the knowledge of God and of self. It seems that the blessed Lord wants to exercise me in patience. He has no compassion either for my tears or for my most sorrowful state. Without him, I see myself immersed in the greatest miseries. I believe that there is no soul more wicked than mine. Even though when I am with Jesus I see myself as Scativa, bad, more than ever. However, since I am with him, who possesses all goods, my soul finds the remedy for all evils. But when I do not have him, everything is over for me. There is no more remedy for my great miseries. And what is more, I am oppressed by the thought that my state is no longer his will, and not being in his will, I seem to be outside of the center, and many times I think of how to go out of it. Now, being with these dispositions, I felt him behind my shoulder saying to me, "You are tired, aren't you?" And I, "Yes, Lord, I feel quite tired." And he continued, "Ah, my daughter, do not go out of my will, because by going out of my will you come to lose the knowledge of me, and not knowing me, you come to lose the knowledge of yourself. In fact, only in the reflections of the light can one distinguish with clarity whether there is gold or mud. If everything is darkness, objects can be easily confused. Now the light is my will, which gives you the knowledge of me, and in the reflections of this light you come to know who you are, and in seeing your weakness, your pure nothingness, you cling to my arms, and united with my will, you live with me in heaven. But if you want to go out of my will, First, you would come to lose true humility, and then you would come to live on the earth, and would be forced to feel the earthly weight, to moan and sigh like all the other unfortunate who live outside of my will. Having said this, he withdrew without even letting himself be seen. Who can say the torment of my soul? November 11th, 1915, Volume 11. One who lives in the divine will feels the very wound which God feels as if it were her own. So she becomes like another Jesus on earth. This morning I felt such compassion for the offenses that Jesus receives, and for the many poor creatures who have the misfortune of offending him, that I would face any pain in order to prevent sin. So I prayed and repaired from the heart. At that moment, blessed Jesus came and seemed to carry the same wounds of my heart, but oh, how much larger! He told me, "My daughter, in delivering the creature, my divinity remained wounded by my own love, for love of the creature. This wound made me come down from heaven to earth. It made me cry, shed my blood, and do all that I did. Now the soul who lives in my will vividly feels this wound of mine as if it were her own. She cries, prays, and would suffer anything to save the poor creature, and so that my wound of love may not be exacerbated by the offenses of the creatures. Ah, my daughter, these tears, pains, prayers, and reparations soothe my wound and descend upon my breast, to be shown to my Father and move him to pity for creatures. Therefore a divine vein ascends and descends between me and these souls, a vein which keeps consuming their human blood. The more they take part in my wound and in my own life, the larger this vein becomes. It becomes so large as to render them other Christs. And I keep repeating to my Father, I am in heaven, but there are other Christs on earth, wounded with my own wound, who cry like me, who suffer, pray, and so forth, like me. So we must pour our mercy upon the earth. Ah, only these who live in my volition take part in my wound. They are like me on earth, and they will be like me in heaven, sharing in the same glory of my humanity. November 11th, 1922, Volume 14. Jesus gave life in the divine will to the acts of all creatures. He associated his most holy mother with this work, and now he is calling the soul to repeat it. Upon coming, my always lovable Jesus drew me so very close to himself, within an immense light, and told me, "Little daughter of my will, this immense light that you see is my supreme will, from which nothing escapes. You must know that as I created the heavens, the sun, the stars, and so forth, for all I fixed the limits, the place, and the number, and they can neither increase nor decrease. I hold all things in the palm of my hand. In the same way, in creating man, at the same time I created all intelligences and each thought, all words, works, steps, and all the rest of man, from the first to the last who will exist. And this was as though natural in me, more so since I myself was to be the actor and spectator of even one thought. Since man would not be able to do it without me, how could I not know it and know also their number? Therefore all the works of the creatures swim inside my will, just as the fish swim inside a vast sea. However, having created man not a slave, but free, because it would not have been decorous for me, nor a work worthy to come out of my hands, had I delivered this man hampered, without freedom, nor could I have said, "Let us make him in our image and likeness," had I not made him free. I wanted to endow him with freedom. I was free. Free he was also to be. Besides, there is nothing that tortures a person more than to give a forced love, which causes diffidence, suspicion, fears, and almost disgust in the one who receives it. Do you see where each active creature, even one thought, has its origin? In the sanctity of my will, with this difference, that if man wants, he can do that very thought, word, and so forth, well or badly, in a holy way or wickedly. Now my will grieved in seeing the acts of many, of which it was the actor, changed into deadly acts for me and for them. Therefore I wanted that my will, becoming the double actor of each act, lay another divine act over all, which was to repay me with as many other divine acts according to the sanctity of my will. However, someone was needed to do this. And here is my humanity, holy and free as well, which, wanting no other life than the divine will, swimming in the immense sea, went on redoubling each thought, word, and work of creature, and laid an act of divine will over all. This satisfied and glorified the divine Father in such a way that he was able to look at man and open the doors of heaven to him. And I bound the human will more strongly, leaving it always free not to detach from the will of its Creator, since detaching from it had made it fall into many disasters. But I was not content with this. I wanted my mamma, holy as well, to follow me in the immense sea of the supreme volition, and to duplicate all human acts together with me, placing the double seal after my own of the acts done in my will upon all the acts of creatures. How sweet it was for me the company of my inseparable mamma and my will. Company in operating makes happiness, delight, love of tenderness, competition, accord, and heroism arise. Isolation produces the opposite. Therefore, as we operated together, myself with my dear mamma, seas of happiness, of delight on both parts, and seas of love arose, which, competing with each other, dived into each other and produced great heroism. These seas arose not only for ourselves, but also for those who would keep us company in our will. Even more, I could say that these seas turned into many voices which called man to live in our will, to give back to him the happiness, his original nature, and all the goods he had lost by withdrawing from our will. Now I come to you. After my celestial mamma, I called you, so that all human acts may have the first seal done by me, the second done by my mamma, and the third by one creature of common stock. My eternal love would not be content if I did not raise one of common stock, who must open the doors to those who would dispose themselves to enter these gates in order to live in our will. This is the reason for my many manifestations, for the many values and effects which I made known to you about my will. These will be powerful magnets to draw you, and then others to live in it. However, in order to enter our will and follow the sublime flights of my acts and of those of my indivisible mamma, being of common stock, you could not enter our will if you did not have, or had at least been transformed into the nature which came out of my hands, before man withdrew from our will. Here are, then, my many graces in order to restore your nature, your soul, to that original state. As I kept giving you graces, I removed from you the seeds, the tendencies, the passions of the rebellious nature, always leaving your will free. Having to call you into the center of my will to live a communal life in it, and to make you cover all the acts done by me, which are not yet known by creatures, it was necessary to restore your nature to this happy state, for my decorum, sanctity, and dignity. Otherwise you could not have run with me in the interminable acts of my will, nor be with me with that familiarity which is needed in order to operate together. The passions, the seeds of tendencies, which are not good, would have been like many bars of division between me and you. At the most, you would have been at the commands of my will, like many of my faithful ones, but you would have been very far from doing what I did, and neither you nor I would have been happy. While living in my will is precisely this: to live completely happy on earth, to then move on to live more happy in heaven. Therefore I tell you, true daughter of my volition, first happy birth from my will. Be attentive and faithful to me. Come and live in my eternal volition. My acts await you, wanting the seal of yours. Those of my mamma await you. The whole of heaven awaits you, wanting to see all of their acts glorified in my will by a creature of their own stock. The present and future generations await you, to be given back the lost happiness. Ah, no, no, the generations will not end until man returns into my womb, beautiful, dominant, just as he came out of my creative hands. I am not content with just having redeemed him. Even at the cost of waiting, I will still have patience, but he must return to me as I made him, by virtue of my will. By doing his own will, he went down into the abyss and transformed himself into a brute. By doing my will, he will rise and acquire the new transformation into the nature created by me. Then will I be able to say, I have accomplished everything. The order of the whole creation has returned to me, and I will rest in it. End of November 11th. Fiat.